So we covered the directions. We talked about cardinal directions versus relative directions. So you know those. What are cardinal directions? East, west, south, north. What are relative directions? Up, down, front, back, left, right. Okay. We talked about proofs, religious proofs for the directions. Very important. Many times when you talk to someone who argues for northeast, he's going to tell you Qibla is not even a religious issue. It's a geographical issue. That's severe ignorance on his part. We talked about the difference between a map and the real earth. We're going to come back and talk about that more, inshallah. We talked about that the directions are real. The directions themselves are actually real. We talked about the fact that you do not have to plot a course to face the Qibla. It's not a matter of determining a trip. Yes. So we want to talk about today the consensus, insha'Allah ta'ala. There was a statement from Ash-Shafi'i I wanted to grab. So I'm not going to be able to do it today. I'm going to grab it, insha'Allah ta'ala, put it in its proper place from his book, If it needs to go somewhere after what we'll read today, then we'll see it when we get to it. And if it needs to go somewhere that we've already covered, I'll go back and review that statement with you. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, Allahumma hdini wa saddidni, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wa sadad. Ameen. Now, some people would claim there's no consensus here. This is, they would say, fundamentally a case of ikhtilaf, difference in opinion, not a case of consensus. Imam Abu Hanifah, when he mentioned the unanimous rule about facing the Qibla, he mentioned the cardinal directions. So they're going to argue here, say, what's the proof that this is unanimous? This is ijma'. What's your proof this is ijma'? So the answer is because there's no other saying. Where did you find another saying here? This is Abu Hanifah. Abu Hanifah was around in the year, before the year 150 after the Hijrah. Before he died in the year 150 after the Hijrah. 150 years after the Prophet. That's so close to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. At that time, there wasn't another saying, and since that time until the 1970s, there wasn't another saying. So how is not a consensus? What is the saying? His saying is Al-Mashriqu Qiblatu Ahli Al-Maghrib, Wal-Maghribu Qiblatu Ahli Al-Mashriq, Wal-Janubu Qiblatu Ahli Al-Shimal, Wal-Shimalu Qiblatu Ahli Al-Janub. The east is the Qibla for the people of the west. The west is the Qibla for the people of the east. The south is the Qibla for the people of the north, and the north is the Qibla for the people of the south. Meaning, in each one of those cases, of the Kaaba, west of the Kaaba, east of the Kaaba, south of the Kaaba, north of the Kaaba. If you are north of the Kaaba, your Qibla is south. If you are south of the Kaaba, your Qibla is north. If you are east of the Kaaba, your Qibla is west. If you are west of the Kaaba, your Qibla is east. This is a unanimous rule here. This is also documented by Shafi'is. Not only the Hanafis documented this, Shafi'is like Ar-Raziyy documented the statement of Abu Hanifah. They agree with it. This is correct. And anyway, what statement from a mujtahid do you have, you who argues for Northeast? This statement of Abu Hanifah, you don't want it because it doesn't work for you. Even if you suppose there was difference in opinion, what statement from a mujtahid do you have, you who argues for Northeast? You have statements from people that we hardly even know their names because they are just contemporaries. Like it's going to be Sheikh, I don't know who. Imam, I don't know who. Maybe from Al-Azhar, some statement you managed to scrape up from somewhere. Maybe. And that's if this one who argues for northeast is someone who is even remotely interested in the statements of scholars. Many of the people who argue for northeast, maybe most of them, they are not interested in the statements of the scholars. They do not argue from the perspective of what the scholars said. They will not tell you what Abu Hanifah said, what An-Nawawi said, or what any other imam said. They're only going to tell you something about a map and something about some math and something about some calculations. They're not going to cite any book of fiqh for you. That's one of my go-tos when I talk to a person who argues for northeast. I'll ask him, did you learn any classical book of fiqh, anything classical in fiqh? They never did. And if they do claim to, sometimes they'll say yes. They won't tell you which book, as if you don't think I'm going to follow up. You're gonna even dare to say yes, like you think I'm not going to follow up and ask you which one, so that you're not going to tell me anyway. In the USA and Canada, we are west of the Kaaba, so our Qiblah cannot be also west. It must be eastward, which there's no difference here. People in the United States and Canada don't argue about this point, that it's eastward. And contrary to an uneducated opinion, we are also indisputably north of the Kaaba, so our Qibla cannot also be north. It must be some degree to the south. Here's a question. How can we say that we are indisputably north of the Kaaba? How can we say that we are indisputably north of the Kaaba in the United States and Canada? Yes, the position of the North Star. Correct. Which is, can you be more specific? Okay, you're on the right track there. So you say, if the North Star is higher in one place than it is in another place, then the place where it is higher is north of the place where it's lower. Or we can say the other way. If the North Star is lower somewhere than it is somewhere else, then the place where the North Star is lower is south of the place where the North Star is higher. And lower and higher here mean from the horizon. What does it mean from the horizon? We did mention in some lessons. Just the other day I saw that beautiful moon. That beautiful, big, large moon so close to the horizon. And I saw it and said, mashallah. Here's something to tell the Muslims so they understand clearly what it means. Low, higher in the sky, lower in the sky. Did you ever see the moon so low, it's close to the horizon? That's what it means, low. And sometimes you see the moon much higher in the sky. It means you need to lift your eyes to see it. Barakallahu feek. And by the way, there's something here. It says here, that is also why Imam Abu Hanifah, when mentioning the unanimous rule about facing the Qiblah, mentioned the cardinal directions. What is this? That is also why. Yani, we are arguing that the directions for the Qiblah are the cardinal directions. So now we're going to see also, we want to cite religious references about the Qiblah and see which directions, what kind of directions, or which directions are these religious references citing. Here, Abu Hanifah, who's a mujtahid, and his statement is a consensus, he's a mujtahid whose statement happens to be a consensus, he cites the cardinal directions. When we say here, contrary to an uneducated opinion, we are also indisputably north of the Kaaba, for the reason we just clarified. So our Qibla cannot also be north Yani the eastern part is agreed upon. So after we rule out west and confirm east, now there's still north and south. We are ruling out north because we are already north of the Kaaba. So our Qibla cannot also be north. It must be some degree south. What does mean, some degree south? This means throughout the United States and Canada, that degree of south varies. From the northernmost region of Canada to the southernmost region of the United States, it's not going to be the same degree south. Some people who argue for northeast and they argue against southeast. Not everyone who accepts northeast argues against southeast. Not everyone who accepts northeast. Not everyone who accepts northeast argues against southeast. But some of them do argue against southeast. They say it's not valid, and they say a blanket statement which really displays their ignorance. They would say, southeast is going to wind you up in South Africa. This is a spread fallacy of theirs. Southeast is going to land you in South Africa, period. That's all it's saying. That's not true in the first place. It's not true. Because when we say southeast, to remind you, when we say southeast, that's a broad term. When we say southeast, what we really, really mean is between east and south from United States and Canada. Not to say there's only one point, which is 45 degrees between east and south. Southeast, 45 degrees between east and south. That's not what we are saying. When we say southeast is the direction, the Qiblah direction, correct Qiblah direction from United States and Canada, it means east, southeast, or southeast, or south, southeast, depending on where you are in Canada or United States. So the degree south from east, how much you're going to turn south from east, it's not going to be the same everywhere in the United States and Canada. If you are high north, as north as you can be in Canada, then you're going to be further, you're going to face east, but you're going to be more south from east than if you were in Key West, Florida. If you are in Key West, Florida, you're not going to be facing the same degree of south from east as if you were at the furthest northern tip of Canada. So it varies here. We're just saying southeast is a broad term. I think that's clear, but that's not clear for a lot of them. So if you talk to someone who argues for northeast, you need to sometimes make this clear for him. The religious evidence, the traditional fiqh method, which is based on the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet's method is applicable in the United States and Canada. The Prophet's method is applicable in United States and Canada. That's a very strong argument. Some person who argues for Northeast, he might claim that the Prophet's method is not applicable in the United States and Canada, and that's why he's using a new method. So you're going to say to him, so you don't believe the Prophet Muhammad was sent to the whole world? So should say, yeah. If he says no, you're going to say, that's kufr. You need to say your shahada. Now it's not even an issue of Qibla anymore. Khalas, forget the Qibla now. Your aqidah is jacked. Don't you know the Prophet was sent to the whole world, alayhi salatu wasalam, Arabs and non-Arabs, humans and genies, until Judgment Day. So, what part of the revelation, according to you, this is his case, but for the Qibla rules, it wasn't revealed to him enough information. Not enough information was revealed to him for his universal rules, his rules that are applicable anywhere in the universe. The rules revealed to the Prophet that were applicable anywhere in the universe. The issue of the Qiblah, which specifically talks about direction, is inapplicable in the United States and Canada. And so it became clear how silly that sounds. The religious evidence, the traditional fiqh method. So that's important. If you're arguing with somebody who argues for Northeast, we are going by a traditional fiqh method. Yani, he's going to be arguing with actual tradition, like actual fiqh. The traditional fiqh method is the fact that the North Star is higher in the sky here than it is at the Kaaba, as we have now said. وَبِالنَّجْمِ هُمْ يَهْتَدُونَ. By the star, they are guided. We covered the ayah already. What does the star mean here? The star means one of two things. There's two ways to explain al-najm in the ayah here, the star. Either it means the North Star in particular, specifically, or it means the star as a type of thing, and therefore means stars. But the North Star would still be the most reliable star by the consensus of humanity, not by the consensus of the Muslim scholars, by the consensus of human beings. North Star is the most reliable star. Yani kafir sailor, he's going to tell you, let's find the North Star. A kafir scout is going to say, we need to locate the North Star. These obvious elementary truths must be stated. Yani, something you think you don't need to say, because so obvious, we have to say it. Because the Northeasters say that we should not turn any degree south of east. Northeaster here means those who argue, as opposed to those who just face northeast because they were told to. They say, because there is a curve in the earth, we must turn north of east. So that's untrue. We already talked about the shape of the earth not influencing the directions, and that the terrain does not influence the directions. Once we confirm that the terrain does not influence the directions, then we confirm that the whole shape of the earth does not influence directions. Because he's going to say to you, for sure, the shape of the earth influences directions. So you say to him, well, the mountain, if there's a mountain between me and the Kaaba, do I just face the mountain, or do I turn to the side and say that it's easier for me to go around, so let me just turn to the side and basically imagine that my Qibla is a beam that turns around the corner, goes around the mountain, and hits the Kaaba because it's a shorter way, for example, as opposed to climbing the mountain and coming back down. So he's going to say, no, you just face the mountain. Don't consider climbing the mountain and coming back down. So then you say to him, so now you just debunked everything you are saying. If only you understood that you're now debunking everything that you are saying. That's right. We're not going to consider climbing the mountain and going back down. We're also not going to say, let's turn to the side and imagine that our prayer is like a boomerang that goes around the mountain and hits the Kaaba. Rather, we are going to disregard the terrain. We are disregarding the terrain. We are disregarding really the fact that there's a mountain there as if it's not there. And likewise, had there been valleys, had there been oceans, the mountain is just like a curve in the earth. The mountain is just like a curve in the earth. It doesn't matter. The directions transcend the terrain. This is indeed a legal consensus, but based on an ancient rule, not based on some people's choosing to abandon that rule and deny the consensus. The Qibla of USA and Canada is only south of east, with varying degrees of south, from northern Canada to southern USA, like we said. Only. Yani, northeast is invalid. It is completely wrong. Due east itself would not be a Qibla, it would not be the Qibla in North America until getting into Mexico. Due east will not be the Qibla until getting into Mexico. So I say, as some people are weaklings in this case, in the United States and Canada, sufficing with east, because they're not willing, they know northeast is wrong, and they're not willing really still to do all of what's right. So they think, didn't some scholars say there's room for error, and do we have to consider north and east, or just east is enough? And it's wrong, really, though, because the North Star is higher where we are than it is at the Kaaba. Therefore, south from east is definitely confirmed. Varying degrees of south from the northern tip of Canada to southern USA. Due east itself would not be the Qibla in North America until getting into Mexico. Northeast is the Qibla of a portion of Mexico, and it is the Qibla of Central and South America. The legal consensus that south is the Qibla when north of the Kaaba was followed by all Muslims since the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yani Abu Hanifah didn't just imagine that this is rule, so he said it. Rather, he spoke from correct knowledge. And he said something that's really very obvious. The first Muslims in North America knew that they were north and west of the Kaaba, so they faced east, then south. Then, no matter the reason, Yani, the reason is irrelevant because they made a blunder. The people of North America defied that old rule only recently in the 70s. What's that? 40 years? And then they denied that there ever was a consensus about being north and west of the Kaaba. They denied that there's any kind of consensus about someone being north of the Kaaba and west of the Kaaba. And you know what they say to? They would say to you, those who argue for northeast, they would say, so you're saying all of these masajid, many, I don't know how many, they are this vast, over, yani, probably more than 95% of the centers in the United States and Canada are facing wrong direction? Question mark? Exclamation point? Sarcasm and criticism intended? And then you say to them, well, before anyone faced northeast in the United States and Canada, everyone faced southeast. So they must have been right according to your skepticism and your sarcasm. They must have been right when all of them were facing southeast according to your skepticism and sarcasm, yes? So what they're going to say? Say, no. Well, that's why they changed. Wallahi, I heard that from more than one of them. The argument in the first place was that I'm skeptical of what you are saying because the vast majority are doing different from what you say, and I don't see it feasible that such a vast majority of Muslims in an area would agree to a blunder, and they would even say, aren't there hadiths that prove that we're supposed to follow the majority? So it's okay, that's your argument. Well, what about when no one faced northeast and everyone faced southeast? Then were they right at that time? You're saying, no, they weren't right. That's why they changed it. Wallahi, subhanallah. Imam al-Haramain said, وَالْإِجْمَاعُ حُجَّةٌ عَلَى الْعَصْرِ الثَّانِي وَفِي أَيِّ عَصْرٍ كَانَ. The consensus is evidence for the following era and for any era to come. we must follow the same rule that existed for over a millennium, over 1,000 years. It also applies to us. There is actually no evidence to disprove the southeast Qiblah. Yani, they're going to say, well, the earth is not flat. They're going to say, southeast is going to land you in South America, in South Africa. The earth not being flat is irrelevant. And southeast landing you in South Africa as a blanket statement is at the extremity of inaccuracy and disingenuity. Yani, you're so disingenuous for this argument. They simply prefer not to use the traditional rules of facing the Qibla that are available and applicable. They are not interested in using Qibla rules that the Prophet came with. They're not interested in that. They're not investigating that. They have no bahth about that. What's the research about how the Prophet determined the Qibla? That's why when you talk to a person who argues for Northeast, he will not produce a single, he's going to produce a hadith or an ayah. Something here or there that he can loosely manipulate, slightly take out of its context. Like when they say, aren't we supposed to follow the majority? So you say to him, yeah, the majority of the Muslims, not the majority of Americans. Not the majority of Americans and Canadians. The majority of Muslims. That means Muslims all over the world. When one person told me that, I said to him, well, so if you go to Iran, you're going to be a Shiite? He said, no. I told him that's majority there in that country. So he stopped talking there. So it's not the majority in a country, it's the majority of the Muslims. They either do not care or they deny that arguing against Southeast is actually a refutation of the Sunnah. Arguing against Southeast is a refutation against the madhahib and the Sunnah. The madhahib which are following the Sunnah. There's two parties who argue for Northeast. Those who have no regard for scholars, no regard for madhabs, no regard for hadiths. I'm telling you that from experience. And those who claim to follow madhab, and maybe those who claim to follow a madhab and they face Northeast in the United States and Canada, some of them don't discredit Southeast, but they just say you can do Northeast or Southeast, which is not true. And their madhabs do not support that. It reached me that one person said, no, the Maliki school said you don't have to consider North and South. I don't think this person wants to have a conversation with me here. This person knows me too. Because what I'm going to say, show me your reference. And I am 99.999999999, many more 9% sure that they have not a single reference, and that the only reason why they are saying that is because they want to justify for themselves praying in a wrong direction, because they want to be in the company of people who pray the wrong direction. They want to be in their company. Since they want to be in the company of people who pray the wrong direction, then they're going to pray with them. And if they're going to pray with them, then they need to justify that for themselves. They do not deny that they're... Yes, to fit in, yes. Like, for example, maybe, like I said, someone wants to be in the company of some people that their Qibla is Northeast in the United States and Canada. He wants to be there with them. He wants to be in their circles, wants to listen to their lessons. He wants to be in their company. He wants to be part of their community. So what he's going to do? And then he's going to justify for himself what he's doing. So what reached me about someone who did such justification, they said, Yani, what I think happened is they allowed someone to tell them, someone told them some hogwash, and without even saying, do you have a reference? Can you just give me something so I can show it to them? When they say, no, that's not true. Because they don't even care. They just want to believe it, and they want to stay doing what they're doing. They're just going to repeat it, and they're going to say, nah, you don't know the Maliki school. The Maliki school, you don't have to consider north or south. We can just face east, and we can face northeast, or we can face southeast. Show me your documentation, please, from the Maliki school. Because I have documentation from the Maliki school that says to the contrary. So I'll show you mine too. And then you can tell me what happened there. They do not deny that their method of determining the prayer direction is new. They do not deny that. So why is there an argument here? When they confirm that this is not a method that the Prophet taught, alayhi salatu wasalam, or used, then it's like they're saying the revelation is incomplete. They rather thought that they were entitled to use a new method because they live in North America. There's something some people call, I think they call it American privilege. I mean, that's what they are saying. This is what Americans believe about themselves. They have some special privilege in the world. But put in their own words, say that again. No, I am. I'm saying here, this is an example of that. Why you are facing this wrong direction because you live in North America, you think you have a special case? You don't have to do what the Prophet did? Is this a case of American privilege here that people in the world talk about Americans when they dispraise Americans for their sense of entitlement and their sense of superiority? But put in their own words, it is because they live on the other side of the world. They say, we live on the other side of the world. I'm translating that. When they say, we live on the other side of the world, the translation is, we're Americans. We're Americans and Canadians. However, the Muslim belief is that the Sunnah is applicable all over the world and until the end of time. Allah says, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. This third verse of Surah Al-Ma'idah proves that our religion was complete before the Prophet died, alayhi salatu wassalam. And it was approved by Allah. وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. Yani, the meaning of the ayah is, today, according to a tafsir, today, yani, on this verse, this revelation, أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ, I have completed your religion for you. Yani, meaning, I have revealed to the Prophet all of the rules, because you know the rules were revealed in stages, intervals, and in pieces. Today I have revealed all of the rules to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The particular specific rules and the general rules that the mujtahids will use to deduce judgments. وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي, and I've completed my endowment upon you. وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. And this religion, this complete religion, this religion of Islam whose rules have been completed today, I accept it for you. I approve of it for you. A footnote here. It says here, they rather thought that they were entitled to use a new method because they live in North America. Footnote. They assumed that the scholars invented the Qiblah rules under the supposition that the world was flat. I'm telling you from experience here, I'm not making this up. They assumed that these scholars invented the Qibla rules under the supposition that the world was flat. That's those of them who don't follow madhab or hadith. They therefore fabricated the condition of needing to know the shape of the earth to determine the Qibla, because they're not following any sunnah or any tradition. They say that the old esteemed imams did not know of this side of the world, and they did not know the shape of the earth, so their Qibla rules do not apply in the USA and Canada, although they apply in Mexico, though, and they apply in Central and South Americas. They didn't. This part of the world is not part of their argument. Mexico, Central America, South America, that's not included in their exclusion, their exception, their istithna. Only United States and Canada is included there. They come very close to saying that north and south for Mecca is one way, and that north and south for Mecca is one way, and north and south for North America is something else, works differently. That's why they say that the North Star works for Mecca and the surrounding lands. But in North America, we must use calculations. They're being influenced by the relative directions. I would say they were influenced by some misguided person who showed them the wrong way, and they took his idea and they built on it and they supported it. Someone who said to them, look, put a string over the globe, see? And they say, oh, wow. There's two sayings about who did this first. What our teachers told us is that there's a man, what's his name? He's from Al-Jama'atul Islamiyya, the Muslim Brotherhood or something. I forgot his name now. Kamal Abdali. That's his name, I think. Kamal Abdali. But when I talk to some people who argue for Northeast, they said, nah, it's not Kamal Abdali. They said to me, it was, as some people, there was a masjid commissioned to be built in Washington, D.C., and the contractors were non-Muslims. And when this is what they told me, and when they wanted to determine how to build the Qibla into this building that they were contracted to build, they put a string over a globe and determined that they're going to put it northeast, and that's how it started. Wabillahi tawfiq. The obligation of facing the Kaaba. The obligation here, what this word obligation means, this word, or what does it imply? It implies religious duty. Religious duty. If I talk to a person who claims, and I have talked to more than one person who claimed that Qibla is not a religious issue, I'm going to say to them, so you're saying it's not an obligation? Facing the Qibla, according to you, is not an obligation. But he might say, yeah, that's right. You can face anyway, really. And then he'll bring you on an ayah that he misinterprets. We already covered that ayah. Here it is real quick. Just to recap. Here's this ayah and commentary on the ayah. فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Whichever way you turn, then that way is the wajh of Allah. This one. So they would say, this one proves you can face anyway, really anyway. Then I'm going to wonder why he's so sternly arguing for Northeast, but he's going to say because it's most accurate, which is not true. What did Imam As-Suyuti say about this ayah? فَإِنَّا لَوْ تُرِكْنَا وَمَدْلُولَ اللَّفْظِ لَقُتَضَى أَنَّ الْمُصَلِّيَ لَا يَجِبُ عَلَيْهِ اسْتِقْبَالُ الْقِبْلَةِ سَفَرًا وَلَا حَضَرًا. Had we been left with only the apparent meaning, of the expression, it would have dictated that it is not obligatory on the one who prays to face the Qibla. Just what it appears from the ayah that you can face anyway, that it's not obligatory to face a particular way. Had we just been left with the words only, what appears from the words. As-Suyuti said, وَهُوَ خِلَافُ الْإِجْمَاعِ. That's against the consensus, though. To take the ayah that way is against the consensus. So here's a scholarly quote from a very high-ranking scholar that this ayah is not proof that you can face anyway. This is the ayah he's going to bring to you. And if you bring him as-Suyuti, you tell him as-Suyuti, if he's one of those, he's going to say, I don't care about Suyuti. Yani, sometimes when I talk to some of those people, when I would quote for them the scholars, like they just ignore it. They ignore it as much as they can. But I'm going to keep coming back to him to force him to acknowledge it. Because, I say, why he's ignoring it like that? Because he doesn't even want to show to me that he has no regard for the scholars, because that's now a whole nother can of worms, as they say. He wants to argue about the Qiblah with no regard for the scholars and not expose to me that he has no regard for the scholars. So when I impose such a thing on him, he's going to say to me, spare me, Suyuti. I gave you the ayah from the Quran. So the obligation of facing the Qiblah. Obligation means religious duty here. So this is a religious issue. Allah says, وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. From wherever you went out, O Muhammad, turn yourself the shatr of the sacred masjid, the direction of the sacred masjid. وَحَيْثُ مَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ. And wherever you believers were, turn yourselves, it's shatr, its direction. This is rule. This is, excuse me. The wording here is a command. فَوَلِّ. if'al, do it. That's a command. Command proves an obligation. Unless you have another evidence to prove that it doesn't. Wherever you believers were, you are commanded. Wallu, turn yourselves, shatrahu, in its direction. لِأَلَّا يَكُونَ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَيْكُمْ حُجَّةٌ. So that the Jewish and pagan people do not have an argument against you. Why do Jews have an issue here? Because the Muslims were first facing Abraham's Qiblah, which was the Kaaba. Then they went to Medina, and Allah revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to face the Israelite Qiblah for some time. The original Israelite Qiblah towards Jerusalem. So that's why the Jews were interested here. Yeah, the Jews had a Qiblah different from Abraham's Qiblah. The Israelites. The Israelites following the law of Moses had a Qiblah different from the Qiblah of Abraham. And they had a prophecy that the last prophet will face the two Qiblahs. So that's why when Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam went to Medina, Allah commanded him to face their Qiblah for some time, so that their prophecy would come true. And then that they would have even more evidence that he is truly the prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But then Allah revealed to him to turn back to the Qiblah of Abraham. So this then stirred talk amongst the Jews. For him to turn away from the Qiblah of Abraham stirred up talk amongst the pagans, because that's their preference. Because the pagans were, in their claim, attached to Abraham. Those pagan Arabs. So when he turned from Abraham's Qiblah, the pagans had talk. When he turned from the Israelite Qiblah, then the Jews had talk. And when he turned back to Abraham's Qiblah, then the Jews had talk. So Allah says, لِأَلَّا يَكُونَ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَيْكُمْ حُجَّةٌ. So that the Jewish and pagan people do not have an argument against you. The Jews' argument against the believers would be that they did not face the two Qiblahs. Had they not turned as the Jews knew they should, it would have discredited the Muslims as having the awaited religion. They would have said, you are not the ones who are upon the laws of the last prophet. You didn't face the two Qiblahs. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْهُمْ. except those who are unjust amongst them, regardless, they will still say he only faced it for his inclination to the religion of his ancestors. Yani, when they face back to the Qiblah of Abraham, then some of the Jews would say something anyway. Yani, Muhammad, he needed to face the two Qiblahs so that the Jewish prophecy would come true. So if he didn't do that, they would have discredited him. And some of them will discredit him anyway, because they just don't accept. And so they're going to say something. What they're going to say, he just turned back to the Kaaba because he wants to face the way of his ancestors. Allah says, فَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ وَخْشَوْنِ. Do not fear debating with them. That's in the tafsir of Jalalain. Do not fear debating with them about the Qiblah. Don't fear debating with them about which way to face. And do not fear their criticisms. وَلِأُتِمَّ نِعْمَتِي عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. Fear me by obeying my commands and face that way, the Qiblah of Abraham, so that I may complete my endowment upon you by rewarding you in the afterlife. وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. And so that you may be guided to the Qiblah of Abraham. So this ayah has in it the evidence for the obligation, the religious duty of facing the Qiblah. Anyone who argues for Northeast and says Qiblah is not a religious issue, you're going to say to him, then you are claiming it's not obligatory. And then, but if you say that, he might say, yeah, that's right, it's not. So then that's a whole nother thing there. But that's going to show you what you're dealing with. And they're going to keep arguing with you. Qiblah is the name of what you face. Linguistically, it is from muqabala, facing or being opposite. So that's the meaning of Qiblah, facing or being opposite. So since we are north and west of the Kaaba, the opposite of northwest is southeast, not northeast. Religiously, the Qiblah is the Kaaba, because that's what we face. That known building, first erected by the father of men, Prophet Adam, and then later rebuilt by our master Prophet Ibrahim, alayhi salatu wassalam, after it was destroyed in the flood of Prophet Nuh, alayhi salatu wassalam. In the Quran, we are ordered to face the Kaaba, which is contained in Al-Masjid wal-Haram. This is a condition for the validity of prayer by consensus. There's ijma'. Facing the Qiblah is a prayer condition bil ijma' by consensus. So who's out of this? Who disregards this consensus? Those ones who argue for Northeast without any regard for madhabs or scholars or hadiths. So those who are claiming, at the least, that they adhere to a madhab and they either argue for Northeast or face Northeast, they accept Northeast, know that you are in line with a party who has no regard for madhabs at all. Know that. If you didn't know it. You are in line with a party that has no regard for madhabs and no regard for hadiths and no regard for scholars. Those ones, they're going to argue for the Qiblah with no traditional method. And they are the originators of this, not you. You who wants to adhere to a madhab. You madhabi. You as a madhabi, you're not the originators of this Northeast method. This is a condition for the validity of the prayer. By consensus, that's a condition that would be achieved by two steps. Establish your bearings. Yani, find the direction of the Kaaba from your location. From your location. Don't find the distance of the Kaaba. Don't look for the distance of the Kaaba. Your prayer direction will be opposite of your direction from the Kaaba. For example, the religious way is for you to say, if you're in the United States and Canada, you would say, I am west of the Kaaba because the sun rises there before it rises here. So the Kaaba is east of my position. And I am north of the Kaaba because the North Star is higher in my location than it is at the Kaaba. So I must turn some degrees south after facing east. This is the easy way for all laymen and scholars. Some simple laymen, some simple laymen, this is easy for him. And for the scholars too. And number two, without concerning oneself with the issues of travel, plotting a course, or distance, or motion, moving around, or the shape of the earth, and by extension, the terrain of the ground, and without one imagining himself praying through the earth. Sometimes people who argue for northeast are going to say, you want to face northeast, you might as well lay down on the ground face flat. Lay down on the ground on your face. Then you're going to be facing southeast through the earth. It's because for some reason he insists on imagining that he is releasing a beam from himself that travels from where he is to the Kaaba. So he's going to say, well, you don't travel through the earth, do you? When he says to you, do you travel through the earth? You say to him, Qiblah is not an issue of travel. And without one imagining himself praying over the earth, meaning like there's a beam that leaves his body and traverses the surface of the earth, going through the mountains and valleys and over the ocean until it gets to the Kaaba. Throw this imagination away. Or any other irrelevant matter, one uses the religious references to his utmost ability to simply face that said direction. So let's stop there then. We have a new title here. How to face the Qiblah. Yeah, let's stop here because this is good to start with fresh, inshallah. Because it's going to be maybe a little bit heavy. It's a fiqh lesson. This is a fiqh lesson here. How to face the Qiblah. Any question?
Barakallahu feek.
Okay. So once person figures out he's east or west, how would he know what degree, let's say here, north or south, but let's say in this case, north to face? What degree to face? He might not know because of his lack of expertise. So then how do you cover this lack of expertise? By knowing that your obligation is to put forth your utmost effort. Yani you are supposed to do your maximum ability. That's why for me, for example, someone will ask me, which degree on the compass do you use? 19, 20, what? I say to him, I don't use any degree. Why? Because I don't have anything that shows me that this degree is more deserving. 19 is more deserving than 20. I'm not that much of an expert personally that this is verified for me. So what do I do? Well, I know for sure that North Star is higher where we are than it is at the Kaaba. So I know I need to put south into my direction. And I know for sure the sun rises at the Kaaba before it rises where we are. So I know I have to put east into my direction. And now how much I also know, and this is where my knowledge starts to run out, I know that it's not far south of east. So I know I'm going to find east, and I'm going to turn to my right south of east. And now all I can do now at this point, without having the expertise to be sure of this degree over that degree, then I'm going to face I'm going to do my obligation, which is to face what I'm most confident about. So I'm going to, for example, turn right from east. At some point, I'm going to say, I'm not confident here. I feel I went too far. I can't in confidence face this far south of east. So I'm going to go back left more. And maybe I'm going to say, I am not confident that this is enough. I feel, I'm not confident that I am south enough from east. So I'm going to go back right a little bit more, and I'm going to say, okay, I can't do more than this. May Allah accept my deed. This is my obligation. Allahu Akbar. No, I'm going to pray. That's for myself. If Allah gives me more knowledge and then I can have more expertise, then I can be more confident about something more specific. Ameen wa feek.